Hello, everybody, and welcome to Tarot Insider once again. I'm Dax Carlisle, coming to you live from Tucson, Arizona, and joining me, of course, my fabulous co-host, Susanne Warnett. Hi, Susanne.
Hi, Dax. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Our second show. It's awfully exciting.
Here we are live on cam. It's like Tarot TV.
It is. Yeah. Tarot Tuesday TV.
I know. We should have just called it Tarot TV. I love it. I love it. Yes, I actually had to get up and wash my hair and put on a shirt and get all fancy and everything here. Oh, God. So we can take a deep breath now. We had some technical problems getting everything going, but everything's working now, and we've got an amazing show for you today. It's actually our first guest ever on Tarot Insider, Janet Boyer. And if you're not familiar with Janet, you should be. If you're not familiar with Janet by now, if you're in the tarot world, you know, you're probably familiar with Janet. She is a tarot author, certified tarot master, famous tarot reviewer. She's reviewed everything, every book and deck in the world, all 6,437 of them. Yes. And she's got a new book coming out. Naked Tarot. I kid you not. It's actually Naked Tarot. Yeah. And but she didn't even have a cam to do the show. We were just going to do it audio, but I sent her a cam. So God help us. We have Janet Boyer live on cam. So I'm just going to pop over here and bring Janet on. In a couple seconds. She's going to join.
Can you see me?
And there she is.
Can you see me? Oh, almost my eye.
How to traumatize children, your eyeball falls out.
Just call me Mad Eye Mooney.
Oh my God. You know, I forgot in the beginning of the show to mention that this is a PG-17 or R-rated episode. So you might want to get the kids out of the room.
I'll try to behave. I will try so hard.
Well, they should have a clue from the title.
We love you.
The title's Naked Tarot, so, you know, they should know.
And here goes up the shirt. No.
This is going to be interesting. Wow. So, you know, it feels like a reunion. For those that don't know, Janet was my co-host on Tarot Today, our first radio show 8 years ago. Well, 7 years and something, 7.5 years ago, something like that. I can't remember. Anyway, it was January 2010. We got that going. And Janet, you are our first guest, or either you or James was our first guest on Tarot Today, and then you ended up joining as a host.
It may have been. It was so long ago.
Yeah, but I pretty much remember you being like the first guest, and then James Rickliff, and then it just snowballed from there. We got, you know, everybody in the tarot world on at one point or another, and that was 7.5 years ago. I'm in my 8th year of broadcasting, Janet.
The time is just tracking.
I know.
It really is.
In fact, here's an example. It's actually the 5th year anniversary of not only the Snowland deck, but Tarot in Reverse as well.
Ta-da!
Full colored glossy pages. You want to know about upside down cards? Yeah, I can't believe it. I realized it just a few days ago that it was 5-year anniversary of not only Snowland being released, but Tarot in Reverse. And then Back in Time Tarot came out in 2008. So the time just is going so fast. It really is.
And I'm going to type, I'm trying to type into the chat room here for everybody, tarotguild.org/Janet. And it gives you all the information about today's show. But if you scroll down, I have a lot of her books up there from Amazon. You can see all the books, you know, it's not a complete collection, of course, but
Thank you.
it's got whatever I could find on Amazon, you know. So a lot of your books are up there. So before we talk about the new stuff, and there's a lot of stuff going on, there was then the coffee tarot deck. Oh my God, of course, that's my favorite thing. And now you're making the expanded version. We'll talk about that too. But before we get into all this cool stuff, you just held up the book, Tarot Reverse. Can you tell folks, you know, what is tarot in reverse?
Well, whenever I write, I try to fill niches that no one else has done. If I see somebody else has done it and done it well, I don't bother rehashing the ground. I figure, you know, we don't need yet another beginner's tarot book. You know, you and I have talked about that many times, like, dear Jesus. And I always had trouble with reversals. And so I had the idea of tarot in reverse. And so not only, and also I bring pop culture into it. I'm very big on modernizing the tarot. And so I brought pop culture into every single one. And I also have 20 different affirmations for every card as well. And it was just important for me to update things. You know, Five of Pentacles, okay, you're on the skids, it's wintry, you might be hungry and sick. Okay, well, and what else? And so for this particular card, for example, I use an anecdote from Mitch Albom, who wrote a book, Have a Little Faith, and he was chronicling a true story of a dying rabbi who asked the author, Mitch Albom, to deliver the eulogy. Well, he'd been away from the faith for years, or he wasn't a practicing Jew. And so Albom becomes involved with a different Detroit pastor who was a reformed drug dealer and convict. And he had a church for the homeless. And so the book Have a Little Faith juxtaposes the world of Judaism and Christianity, white and black, poverty and richness, and doubt, forgiveness. And so, you know, I talk about what it means to be on the outs, not only physically, but also spiritually, feeling like you're on the outside, because, you know, in most renderings of the Five of Pentacles, we do see a church's stained glass window. So I try to incorporate different symbols from different decks, and plus the energy, sometimes in numerology. And I put on this chapter, the Five of Pentacles shows quite literally two indigents walking in the snow outside of a church. When this card is reversed, destitute individuals may finally find succor and receive kindness from those in the church or outside of it in faith-based charities. On the other hand, some strains of spirituality believe that negative vibrations, sin, or incurring divine displeasure somehow causes physical, emotional, or financial suffering, promoting the attitude that if it's their fault, why should we help? Fortunately, the majority of the world's religions and spiritual traditions eschew such elitism. And so I use my experience, you know, I'm trained as a Christian theologian, and I was a co-pastor for a while, and my experience with comparative religion, pop culture, also had a minor in psychology, so I did some counseling when I was in college. So I try to bring everything into it, and I also try to put myself in a queer's shoes. If I were asking about this and this card come up, what could it mean? And so I'm doing a lot of lateral thinking and synthesis, and I bring that really to all my books. But Tarot in Reverse was specifically for upside down cards. And, you know, I explained to people that it doesn't usually mean the opposite, because a lot of times there is already a card for that. I mean, what's the opposite of joy, Three of Cups? Well, we've got the heartache, Three of Swords. You know, it seems ridiculous to me to interpret the Three of Cups reversed as sadness and heartache, especially when you have the Five of Cups and the Three of Swords. So I try to do and think ways that other people don't, and present tarot in a fresh way.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I don't even use reversals. I don't know about you, Suzanne.
Well, you don't have to. That's the cool thing about Tarot in Reverse, because even if you don't use reversals, and I say this in the beginning of the book, I say how each card is a whole continuum. Yeah. You know, you have the light and the dark, and some people use dignities, some people, you know, read them in a spread. And so what I'm doing is I'm just covering the flip side of cards that sometimes don't get highlighted. Like sometimes the dark side of the light cards, like the Sun or Three of Cups, or the beneficial aspects of, let's say, the Tower, the Ten of Swords. So even if you don't use reversals, it will still help, your tarot toolkit, because then you'll see the whole wide spectrum of a card and then choose to use the keywords or not.
Gosh, I have to dust off my copy now.
Dax! Honest to God. You got to read it and use it. And know
Damn it. I told you this is a PG-17 version.
I didn't even cuss yet, and I did bring the Jack.
Yes. Oh,
so
we forgot to announce that
yes.
that Janet does have her bottle of Jack, and if she says the F-bomb during the show, she has to take a shot.
Yeah.
So I don't know, Suzanne. We might want to.
See, if I'd have known that, I'd have had my gin.
Yeah, you could have had your gin there. Maybe we should try to get her to say the F-bomb so we can get her class.
Don't piss me off. You know my triggers. Just mention certain people or words. No.
There you go. There you go.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
Suzanne, we should get her pissed.
We totally should.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm talking about the British version of pissed, not pissed off, but pissed meaning drunk.
Oh, I thought you meant mad. I was like, oh, no, don't do that. That's more scary than me drunk.
I have to translate sometimes into
right.
English for Suzanne.
Well, see, I'm pretty good, because obviously we get a lot of American TV and movies. So, I'm pretty good at translating American English.
About that, I watched Elementary last night, an episode I had downloaded a long time ago, and it had his one compatriot. She came back from England, and she actually said pissed. It's like, let's get pissed.
Yeah.
And then in the same day, I watched Doctor Who too.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm pretty up on a lot of the.
I'll have you speaking like a native within the year, I tell you.
Absolutely. So
I got my English baptism with Agatha Christie.
Oh, there you go.
Yes, of course,
I used to read Agatha Christie in high school. Totally, when I found her, I was about 14. Totally devoured it, and I was like, "What the hell's a flat?" I went up to the flat, and I'm thinking, "What is that?" Or the lift, the loo, the boot of a car, and I'm like, "What?" And so I got a bit of an education.
Yeah, exactly. We like to confuse you. That's what it is.
That's what we get for leaving the pond.
I just downloaded
a lot of us Yanks.
It's a 2016 film that's a modernization of one of the, not a modernization, but a refilming of one of the Agatha Christie's, and I just downloaded that. That's, talk about the synchronicities we're having on the show.
Yeah.
But actually, reverse before I go, I wanted to two things, before we get too much off on a tangent here. One is that, okay, so depending on the spread and the cards on the spread, you may use something out of, tarot in reverse, even if you don't use reversals like you just said, and I don't use reversals. And I was asking Suzanne, didn't you tell me you don't use reversals either?
Yeah, I don't. I mean, the reason for that is very simple. I don't have OCD as a psychological disorder. We do have it in my family. But I just like neatness. And I don't like all my cards being upside down. But like you said, Janet, when you can still get reversal meanings, even if your cards are all lined up the proper way.
Right.
And that's trying to explain that to people that are new to the tarot. And I mean, I started reading the tarot a long time ago, 1990 something, when I was at university, and I was doing psychology and social studies, and they all sort of tied in together. But back then we didn't have the internet. If you wanted a book, you couldn't go on Amazon and Google it or anything like that. You had to, if you were lucky, you might have a new age store near you. I didn't. My library was minuscule. So, I had all these, I mean, my first deck, in fact, I've actually got it here. My very first deck was a Tarot de Marseille.
Wow.
Now, I mean, talk about hardcore for going in with your first deck.
That's the hardest.
And all that kind of thing.
Ouch.
And I did really struggle. And to be honest, for the last 20 odd years, I've used it mainly as a majors deck. But, you know, I just struggled with reversals. And also, I was going to mention what I love about you, Janet, is the fact that you do use pop culture. You know, the literature that I was reading about tarot back in the 90s, it really hadn't changed in about 100 years, you know.
Yeah.
Definitely need contemporary meanings. And
yeah, exactly. It
Naked
can be
Tarot
really
is really
hard.
great for that. We'll get into that later in the show too.
Yeah, exactly. It can be really hard sometimes when you're learning the tarot to see these, you know, and quite antiquated phrases sometimes as well that come up. And so, you know, when we're talking about the Naked Tarot, one of the things that I loved about it was the fact that you are so bang up to date. You are slapping us in the face with it.
Oh, thanks for the Star Trek references, by the way. I totally got the. I think
I just added 2 to the book. I actually went to my publishers. It's in the copy editing stage, and we're introducing Noah to Star Trek Next Generation.
Oh, that's great. Oh, Janet,
we have a freezing.
Janet, you froze. Uh-oh. Let's see if we get Janet back here. And I was going to mention, we're actually...
What's that?
Oh, there we go. Okay, something happened there, Janet. I don't know.
It said my internet connection is unstable. I'm like, don't be calling me unstable. Everybody else does.
But we all already knew that, Janet. It's okay, you know. Janet's a little unstable. You know, she's got her bottle of Jack there.
If it means brilliant, then yes, I am unstable.
It froze and then it caught up. No, but what I was going to say, it's interesting because every other week we're doing an interview topic, and May 30th, to reverse or not, that is the question. And we're actually going to be talking about this in a few weeks, folks. It's May 30th, right after Cooch Daniels and Victor Daniels are coming on talking about their new book, Tarot at a Crossroads, on the 23rd. And next week on the 16th, we're talking Tarot Myths and Mysteries, plus your calls if you have questions. Ooh. Mini reading. And we can do that today too from the chat room, or you can call in. And all the information is there at tarotguild.org/Janet. The phone numbers to call in. But if you're already on here and have a microphone, we can bring you right on. We can even bring your camera on. You can ask Janet questions. We can do a mini reading for you. If you don't want to go on cam, just turn on your mic. If you don't have a mic, there's telephone numbers right there on tarotguild.org/Janet. And there's even international telephone numbers. So you can call from all around the world. It's really great. Wow. So I got all that out.
And breathe.
Yeah. You know, we're talking about reversals. You know, with our Snowland deck, I don't read reversals because we consciously, you know, really brainstorm every image. And so we consciously tried to put a bit of a spectrum in each image from light to dark. So the Snowland is not actually geared to read reversals, even though you could. And so I wrote Tarot Reverse 2 for meditation. And that's why I did the affirmations to deal with life reversals. Like if you do a personal reading and a card's reverse, what could it mean psychologically? What could it mean spiritually? What could it mean emotionally? I'm really big on using tarot consciously more than like with fortune telling. And so, you know, if you want to know, I'm a big advocate of looking through a deck and asking yourself, okay, how do I feel today? Or what is bugging me? Or what do I want to really know? What is burning in me? Looking upright, face up, and then you pick a card to symbolize that. And if somebody were to feel a certain card, but let's say there's some misgivings or some weirdness with it, if they look in tarot in reverse or, you know, consider the reversals, it might give insight into what's going on. And then you can also look through the deck, okay, well, how do I wish to feel? And then you can always draw a random card or another conscious card for the middle one as a bridge to get from there, you know, from here to there. So I'm really big with self-empowerment, using tarot more for that than even fortune telling.
Right, right. Well, my whole problem with reversals, we'll give you a sneak peek of the show we're going to do on the 30th. you know, I'm thinking of it, you know, from an artist's perspective. Imagine if, you know, an artist had given you a painting and they come over to your house and you take him in the room where the painting, you've hung it on the wall and it's hung upside down.
Ron feels the same way as an artist.
They would
Yeah.
freak. They would go, wait, no, it goes this way. It goes
I
this
know.
way.
When I give him like my Green Witch Tarot deck and say do a reading, he sees, oh, there's reverse. He's got the OCD, and he'll put them all upright. I'm like, Ron, just leave it alone. No, I have to put them all upright. So
Yeah.
I see what you mean, but I see tarot as so much more than art. I see it as like a living archetype, an entity. And unfortunately, life on earth is not a tidy, upright life. You can go through life and you're walking on a sidewalk and it looks like a beautiful day and you trip on a stone and you break your arm. You know, I mean, that's life. And to me, the reversal.
The artist thing is just one aspect of it. There's a lot of other things too, because, you know, I come from a more left brain kind of thinking on things, and I analyze things logically, and as a numerologist, I'm, you know, always thinking about the number aspect of things, and thinking of probability and all that in relation to, you know, reversals coming up. Even you have to purposely affect the deck in order to generate that, and I find it to be what's the word for it, contrived. The whole thing is,
no, see, I think all uprights is contrived.
I don't know what you mean by that, but
left brain. See, I'm very right brain, so I think laterally and matrix and energetically. So for me, you know, feeling that you have to necessarily order a deck. I mean, you can always, you know, put it right back up, but just, you know, put a note in the back of your mind. Okay, this was reversed. And I have a whole like list of things it could mean, you know, that it needs to be expressed. It's subconscious. I mean, how do you know if a card is literal and overt or subconscious and suppressed? You know, of course, I mean, if you do a one card draw, then that's all you have to go with. And you have your intuition. So, I mean, I think it's just up to a person whether they want to do reversals.
Yeah, I mean, I have nothing against people using reversals, and people that, and we're going to talk about this in the show, that, you know, a lot of tarot readers that use reversals, I mean, they do, you know, wonderful job with that, and they can't imagine not using reversals, you know. But I think if you start off from the very beginning, and just the way you shuffle the deck and every little detail, you know, I mean, if you shuffle your deck the right way, you're never going to get reversals anyway. I mean, you have to literally flip half the deck around and shuffle them together, you know, or throw it down on, I call it the chaos method. You throw it down on the table and you push them all out.
Well, see, I call that the finger painting method.
And then that's another way to describe it. Yeah.
Right brain, left brain.
Chaos method. Yeah. So you create chaos and then you bring it back into order, and you're going to get reversals then, you know. But I mean, you know, I think one of the first things that really got me thinking about this was using computer programs, because I'm big into computers. So obviously, as soon as they started developing them, it's like, oh, tarot program, cool. What does it do? You know, and in the settings, you can check. It's like, do you want 1/4 of the reversals to show up? Half the deck?
Yeah, that makes me nervous.
So you know, when you just thinking of that made me really think of the whole thing again, and that if you're able to set that like that, you know, and then the algorithm decides what to pop up, it's contrived, you know, it's the whole thing, you know.
With a computer program, yes.
Yeah.
But I'm not into using tarot and computer programs, so old school.
Right. But I'm talking about, that made me think of even using the physical deck and what you have
I understand.
And then what you have to do to create a reversal in the first place. And then if you don't ever reorder your deck, does that mean that every time the Three of Swords comes up, it's reversed every time because you haven't reshuffled your deck. You know, the whole thing just, you know, makes my brain go, you know,
Yeah.
it's like I just keep them up and down. I shuffle so they're always up and down, and then I use the spectrum that you talked about. But anyway, we're going to talk about that on the 3rd. So let's catch up a little bit. You know, it's been 2.5 years really since we talked a lot, you know, and what's all been going on?
Oh dear Lord.
You know, we'll get to Naked Tarot, but
Yeah.
a lot of other things have been going on too, because
Yeah.
Ron started painting the additions to the coffee deck, and tell people about the coffee deck.
Well, yeah, there is so much going on. Noah's a senior this year. I homeschool.
Yeah.
Homeschool.
Talk about time flying, like you were saying.
Yep, I know. He was just a little guy. So he's graduating this year. Coffee Tarot, we did a majors only edition. We weren't planning on doing a full, but people were like, please, please do it. And I strong-armed Ron and talked him into it. And because it's a faster process, the Coffee Tarot is done with watercolor pencils as opposed to acrylics. So the process is totally different. With our Snowland deck, Ron actually hand cut each piece of wood. Then he sanded it by hand. Yep. Gessoed it, a couple layers of the white gesso paint. He had the drawing, and then he transferred the drawing to the whiteboard, and then he would, by hand, acrylic paint everything. It took him 2 years of solid weekends and evenings after work to finish it. And so it's extremely time consuming. That's why, you know, Snowland is so colorful and all the colors pop. I don't have my majors Coffee Tarot, it's in the other room, but that is more of a softer deck. We did all the majors in sepia, coffee colors, and Ron was going to actually paint with coffee, but he tried that and it did not work out very well. And so,
I was hoping it worked out because I
know, but it didn't. Even with the good paper, it would wrinkle and pucker, and you couldn't get a lot of shades. So instead, he got a lot of brown pencils, all the shades of brown and muted earth tones in the brown family. And so all the majors were coffee colored, basically sepia. And when I was strong-arming him and saying, please, please do a full deck, he said, I don't think I can do another 56 cards in the brown palette, you know. And I said, well, why don't we try to color code it a bit? You know, the pentacles can be more heavy on the greens and some yellows. The swords can be more heavy on the grays and the dark blues and the purples. The fire cards, the wands, of course, can be like a lot of reds and oranges and yellows. And the cups can be more aquamarine and pinks and the softer colors. And so he thought about it and boom, you know, so he started doing that. He has about 15 cards left plus a new backing. So the majors we only printed 50 and that's it. So it's made, you know, really limited edition collector's.
Yeah, I couldn't get a copy.
Yeah, me either.
We even had
an extra, and I'm the coffee dude, you know.
So it's going to be a totally different backing. I think he's going to redo the full card too, which is the bean. That's our full. I think he's going to redo that. So yeah, so we don't know. We were going to do a Kickstarter. We were hoping it was going to come out in the fall, but he has this idea about creating the ultimate chair. So he's been in his wood shop, you know, with a lot of wood stuff now doing his chair. So the Coffee Tarot is a little bit on hiatus. I just finished Naked Tarot end of March. I'm under contract with the Dona Books to do another book called 365 Tarot Daily Insight. This could be like a daily devotional. So got to get cracking on that. I have an idea for another book called Tarot Lookalikes. I'm thinking about proposing it like today. I'm insane. I'm not sure. I'm still on the fence about that. We were considering doing a 5-year anniversary Snowland deck.
Yeah.
Maybe we're edging, but I'm not sure. And then I'm volunteering for the very first International Tarot Day, which is July 8th, 2017. some of us got together in the Tarot Nerds Facebook group, and it just, we thought maybe we could pull off a majors only, but so many people expressed interest. And so now we are going to do a full deck and try to have it done by International Tarot Day, which is July 8th. And I even have a blog up for it, which is tarotdaydeck.com. I don't have any cards up there yet, but I'm going to have cards and bios of everybody. It's not going to be for profit. So we're going to sell the deck at cost, practically at cost, so anybody can use it and get it. And
That's awesome.
As you can see, I'm a little bit busy. Plus, I have my pro readings on the side. People order readings. I do readings.
Wow.
Busy.
Back to the coffee tarot. So he is still doing 56 additional cards. I just wanted to say your description of the Snowland process is enough to make anyone forget about doing their tarot project, their tarot deck project. Wow.
I know, it's so hard. Oh my God.
Oh my God. Oh my God, you turned English suddenly.
Hey!
Just kidding, Suzanne. Just kidding.
Oh my God. See, I thought that, and I thought there's no way in hell I'm going to say that. And then who does? Dak, you're going to be now on the tarot shit list.
I am. Oh,
it's about time someone else is.
All the tarot minions out there are watching this, and they're all. I'm going to get the hate letters now. And, and they're going to that Dax Carlisle again. Jesus. Oh boy. So you want me to read from Naked Tarot? I want you to read an excerpt from Naked Tarot. That'd be great.
Okay. So you might want to know why Naked Tarot. Yeah. Honestly, do you want the honest truth of why I started it initially?
Yep.
I was pissed off at the tarot community.
Okay.
And I thought I'm going to give you.
That's understandable.
And I thought I'm going to give you a big finger in the form of a book. This one. But the thing about it is then I lost my anger. I forgave everybody, and I'm like, oh shit, now what do I do?
Exactly.
So I'm yes, I forgive you haters, and karma will get you. But beside that, I started off thinking, you know what, I'm just going to just rip the lid off of all this, fake shit. And then, I forgave people, and then it was like, okay, wait a minute. I'm not going to drum up that anger and the feelings of hurt and betrayal and just at the lies and slander. It's not worth it. So, I was stuck for a while. I mean, I signed this contract 4 years ago. But yet, I actually thought about, and Ron suggested, he's like, well, why don't you just write to the publisher, tell them you can't do it. They'd understand. And but I'm just a woman of my word. And the thought about backing out on a contract to me was almost like lying. And I couldn't. So, I had a lot of talks with the universe and my guides and my family. I was actually blocked for months. I never believed in writer's block until it happened to me. I mean, I literally could not write anything, not even a blog post. I mean, you could sit there with a blank piece of paper and I could not write. It was scary because it wasn't just I didn't feel like it, or I had an obstacle to surmount, or I needed to have my butt in a chair. I was literally frozen. I felt like I had nothing to say about tarot, that I didn't want to say anything. But even if I tried to do fiction, I couldn't. I mean, it was a literal block for months. And it was a scary thing because I'm like, okay, is my career as a writer over? Well, I'm going to have to deal with it. I was trying to come to terms with the fact that my life as a writer might be over. Okay. And that's a lot of stuff to go through. Very Scorpio energy for months.
Yeah.
And I really didn't start getting my mojo back until last fall. And, I think through the forgiveness and just surrendering to the universe and saying, you know what, my ego is not involved in this anymore. My ego has nothing to prove. I don't have to say, the bitch is back anymore. I don't care what people think. I have nothing to prove. And I just surrendered to the universe. I'm like, okay, fine. It's okay. And I think when I surrendered that and I had the forgiveness and the cleansing, then gently the mojo starts coming back and more humility, because I did have some arrogance, I realized. And some of what I went through may have been karma. Looking back on it, there was arrogance and derision. And, you know, it's one thing to be a Queen of Swords and have very high standards and want excellence and to be irritated about sloppiness and people calling in their work, you know. But then, you know, then you can cross the line into derision and hurtfulness and meanness. And I may have done that, not intentionally, but, you know, I was in a lot of very intellectual headspace. And sometimes when you do that, you know, there's a disconnect between the bridge of the lower and upper chakras, the heart chakra. And so, you know, I think I got some humility. I read this book called Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday, and that's when I was coming out of it. And it just confirmed things. I'm like, damn, if I'd only read that a couple years ago. So, you know, it was a lot of soul searching. And, you know, my heart was never to hurt anybody. It was never to hurt or demean or bully, any of it. It was never that. It was always trying to raise the bar. It's like, come on, let's all bring out the best in people. But I realized that not everybody responds to that. And some people are more emotional and tender than others. And so, you know, I had all this into consideration, and then the mojo came back, and the universe probably thought, okay, now she's got some humility. Oh, we can give her gift back. It's like, yeah, thanks. Now I don't want it. Isn't that how it goes? It's like you got to surrender it to get it back, and then by then it doesn't matter anymore, which is probably what the universe needs to work through you anyway. So naked tarot is still blunt and in your face, and it rips off the facades that we humans often have, how we try to fool ourselves, fool others, the denial. But except for maybe the Hierophant, which rightly needs a smackdown, and a few other cards, I think there's a compassionate side too, especially in the spiritual advice. Like I'll have some F-bombs and I'll get real in your face, but then once I get to the spiritual advice, you know, nurturing mama comes out and says, hey, you know. And so I hope people like that, because that is how I am. You know, yes, I am a bitch, can be a bitch, and I'm but on the other hand, I've had to be that way to get through all the stuff I've been through, being a widow at 25 when my husband died of leukemia, a lot of crap. You know, I had to get a thick skin and some confidence. You know, I hadn't always been that way. But, you know, there's the generous, nurturing. When people meet me, you know, in person, and they find out about the stuff online or they've seen it, they're like, oh, how can people say that about you? You're the
That's what I was like.
Person.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I know, totally. But see, online, there is no benefit of, you know, the face. And even a smiley emoticon can't do it, because then people will think you're being sarcastic.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. We found all kinds of problems, like just within our group of hosts, communicating through text and on Facebook. And in fact, it kind of led in an odd way to this show, because we decided that we were going to use the Zoom platform whenever a conversation got, you know, more than a sentence, because you just can't tell the inflections. And so for the past few months, we've been using Zoom and jumping on whenever we needed to talk business.
Good idea.
Or there was a question or something like that, because, I mean, you would not believe how you can say something.
Oh, I believe.
And mean one thing. Yeah, I know you know, but I mean, it's unbelievable to me how they can take it 180 degrees backwards.
Yes.
I mean,
I know.
From what you were actually trying to say. And it also, I was just going to say, it also leads into, you know, what's going on in general in our lives and in the world these days, where everything is tech. I mean, you're standing or walking along with, you know, a friend on each side, and all three of you are, you know, and you might even be texting to each other, and you're right next to each other, texting to people that aren't there, you know, and people don't get the body language, the mannerisms, they don't see the understand the inflections in your voice. They don't hear that, you know,
or the warmth,
yeah,
or the playfulness.
Yeah.
So we started using Zoom for this, you know, and then when we decided to spin off our Thursday show off Angelic Realms Radio, which we were already doing tarot and numerology on Thursdays, we decided that the Tarot Guild group was growing by leaps and bounds. We're almost up to 5,000 members, and they really wanted a tarot show that was just tarot. And so we came up with the idea of Tarot Insider, and we decided to use the Zoom platform because it enriches, even though I have to get up in the morning and do my hair and put my shirt on and everything now. But
that's why I don't do YouTube. I don't want to curl my hair.
But now, you know, we're able to have guests on like yourself. They can actually see you and interact with you. They feel like they have a better connection with you. They can see the
Right.
mannerisms, the body language. They, like we said on our first show, Suzanne, you mentioned how what percentage of
It's apparently it's 97% of communication is non-verbal. So it's not the words you say, it's the, you know, it's your facial expression, it's the syntax, it's the you know, your body language, it's, you know, are you gazing over here while you're talking, or, you know, it's, and you lose that in the writing. And I actually think that this is a skill that we're losing. We think with social media we're becoming much more connected, but in actual fact, in terms of face-to-face relationships, I do think something is getting a little bit lost in translation. I think we're really in a transitional period. And the other thing I kind of come across when people approach me and they're like, oh, how do I learn the tarot? How do I learn the tarot? It's like people's attention spans are not what they used to be. I'm sorry, people, but, you know, even I'm so easily distracted, you know, and I'd like to think I was quite focused. I meditate and I do this and that, but I'm like a magpie. It's like, oh, shiny things, and I'm distracted.
I said to Ron the other day, I said, do you think I have ADD?
Yeah, exactly.
He goes, no. He said, you just have a lot of interest, but I got concerned.
Yeah.
I'm like...
No, because there are so many shiny things that distract us.
Right.
And I wanted to mention that because that kind of ties in very nicely. You give two really good techniques that if people aren't familiar with your work, you give two really good techniques for kind of getting to grips with the tarot, don't you? You've got your back in time method, which is kind of how I learned the tarot way back in the 90s. But I also like the 7 clue method, because that is something that I kind of do, but actually seeing it all written down.
Right.
Boom! You know?
Oh, I'm glad.
I've actually got a deck that I have, you know what it's like, you see a deck, you have to have it.
Yes.
Beautiful and shiny,
Yeah.
and I've really not connected with it at all. The colours are really muted. I'm going to name it because it is beautiful. It's the Tildwick Tarot. But what he does is he doesn't use people in it. So the colours are really muted. It's very sort of Jungian. The idea is that the whole deck is based around a house, and you're wandering around the house and you're seeing the imagery of the cards in various rooms and that kind of thing. It's absolutely gorgeous, but I didn't connect with it. So can you explain those techniques so that maybe other people can kind of get an idea of where you're coming from with them?
Well, the 7 clue method, as you know, I was trained in theology and I was a co-pastor, and I've done a lot of Bible teaching. And so I was immersed too with we had to take Christian education courses and things like that, because when you go to major in pastoral ministry, you kind of have to have a breadth of teaching theory, how to teach, some psychology, you have to have theology. And I became aware of teaching styles and learning methods. And not everybody learns visually, for example. And some people are more audio, they do better for lectures. Some people do better by kinesthetic, where they have to physically be shown how to do it. Those are the ones that usually are wonderful woodworkers and mechanics and chefs. People who use their hands often learn by being shown. Cooking shows, show it. A lot of people don't like cookbooks that don't have pictures or step-by-step instructions. And those are actually learning styles. You have the kinesthetic, you have the audio, you have the visual, you have the digital, which is all of them. And so I wanted to include the learning styles in the 7 clue method so that it covers everybody's bases. So it makes a person actually look at the card, walk in the card, interact with the card. Then I ask them, what's the temperature? What are you feeling? So the kinesthetic learners can tap into their physical sensations of a card. And then I ask, what do you notice? What do you see? What colors are there? Who's in the space with you? Then I do the audio. Who speaks first? You or the high priestess? You or the figure? What do they say? And then I try to do the esoteric aspect for those of us who are digital, which is a combination of all, plus it's also very abstract. So I, ask with that, symbolic, what esoteric symbolism do you know that reminds you of this? Is there anything in astrology, Kabbalah, numerology, that you can bring to this and to help decode what you're seeing when you're in the card? And then I have the spiritual aspect. And so that way I try to cover everybody's bases, so It's not just visual learning, it's not just audio, it's not just kinesthetic. I try to cover all my bases, and so I include the 7-clue method, not just in the Snowland deck companion book, but also I thought it was important to include it in Naked Tarot as an overview, because I thought, well, I'm going to do a synopsis of the bit method in case somebody wants to learn through pop culture, literature, memories, biographies. They can work backwards, or if they want to do the 7-clue where they start with the card and then they go through the 7 clues, or they can just open up the book and then go through all my keywords, the overview, and then I have a section on the personifications and embodiments. I have a quote. I have a bunch of correspondences, like a Disney totem, animal totems.
I loved that.
I think there should have been
how many
more
Disney
Star
films have you
Star
seen?
Trek.
Oh, a lot. I'm serious. You should see how many Disney.
I've not seen that film. I need to check it out now.
Oh, yeah. Total Disney buff. And, there was other things I was going to keep on adding to this, like superheroes and archetypes. And Ron's like, how many correspondences? Like last minute I did the physical health and elements. I did and I wrote that like in a day, all of them, intuitively. And he's like, how many correspondence? And even Noah was like, are you doing more correspondence? And I thought, okay, I'm going to stop, because when I pitched Naked Tarot to Dodona Books, I said, estimate tops 95,000, and I'm seeing, the word count and word going past 100,000, 105,000, and I was going to even tag on the tarot lookalikes at the end of the book, but I come up with over 50 of those, so I'm going to do a separate book called Tarot Lookalikes. But I wanted to cover a lot of stuff. Now, some people may think that's too much. I don't think you can ever have too much. I feel like sometimes learning tarot is rock climbing, with your fingers. And you just want anything you can grasp and anything you can hold on to. And so anything can be a jumping point, a springboard to intuition, to logic. So I try to cover a lot of stuff. I mean, I even do flower essences. I've been into flower essences for about 15 years now. Fantastic. I love aromatherapy. So I really brushed up on my aromatherapy. And I didn't just do the Bach flower essences. I also did Australian for our friends down under, because I've had books on the Australian flower essences. Even though I haven't used them myself like I've used with Bach, I immersed myself back into the Australian and asked myself, okay, if a person was going through this, what would the remedy be? And I cross-referenced that. I did crystals. I did a lot of work. I mean, just the correspondences probably took me over a year to research. Animal totems, I immersed myself not only into stuff like from Ted Andrews and Stephen Farmer, but I actually got science. I have our science books that I've used, to homeschool Noah, like Animal from BK. I actually looked in animal books and biology and found out, okay, are they predators? Are they prey? How do their homes look? How do they build their homes? What kind of temperature do they like? What are their feeding habits? So there's like a lot. I mean, just the correspondences themselves were a lot of work, let alone, all the snark and, and then at the end I did the course, recommended resources like Star Trek, Twilight Zone episodes, literature, art pieces, sculpture. And I also created a special spread for every single card on top of everything. So it's like having 3 books really in a way, because then you have the 78 spreads,
Yeah, because I must admit, I saw the spread for the 10 of coins, and I'm just, do you know what? That is just so what's going on in my life right now, and I'm there with my card. I'm like, Okay, very useful. And
Oh,
yeah,
good.
I loved that aspect of it because I think, obviously I've been reading for over 20 years, but you never stop learning with tarot.
No.
But I think if you're a bit newer to tarot than we are, you know, you're going to get even more out of it than, I've got to be honest, I've ever seen from a book. I'm not just blowing smoke up your backside.
It's jam-packed.
Yeah. It's you know, there's, because whichever way you want to approach the tarot, which, you know, whether you are totally pop culture, you've got your Disney references and all that kind of thing, and your characters from pop culture that embody that particular card element kind of thing. And I just love that, because I think that's the hardest thing when you're learning tarot. It's seeing these concepts that can be overwhelming and learning how to put them into the everyday. And I think that's why I'm sitting there with my cup of tea and my biscuits, British biscuits, not American biscuits, totally different thing. Well,
yes, that's another thing.
That. Sitting there with a chocolate biscuit and a cup of tea, and I'm just reading the book, and I'm like, actually, you know, I'm making notes, and okay, okay, for a cup of tea, read gin and tonic, but never mind.
Tea.
Hot toddy.
But
it's code word for Jack. No, I'm teasing.
Yeah. But it's also, the other thing I liked as well is the fact that you did sort of cross-reference outside the traditional frame of reference. That's a rubbish sentence, sorry.
I actually want more. I mean, you know, I mean, I think that there should have been more. I think there should have been Star Wars references too. I mean, but
maybe we should come up with a a little blog thing, and we can create our own. Buffy the Vampire Slayer or something like that.
We'll have an extra compendium reference book that they can buy that goes along with Janet's Naked Tarot or something like that. And I don't want to go through the show without thanking you for, speaking of references, for the acknowledgement in the acknowledgements.
Oh, yes.
I'm in the acknowledgements.
You are.
I about passed out when I was, oh my God.
His head's been so big since then, Janet. Seriously, we can't work with the man anymore.
You know that.
See, that's because I'm not there to keep him in line. Oh, by the way, you could see an excerpt of my Naked Tarot by going to nakedtarotbook.com.
Oh, good.
Now, we're talking about it as if it's in hand, but Susanne and Dax have an advanced copy. You know what it looks like? It looks like that.
Yes. That was one going to be one of my next questions was, you know, when is it scheduled to come out, and can we have you back when it's coming out for a launch party?
Well, it's too early to have. I mean, I literally just submitted it at the end of March, and they say it's too early for a date, but it's looking like between Halloween and Christmas. I hope to God it's out at the end of the year. I think so. I think it'll be out by then, and it's got over 107,000 words. And you know, Susanne talked about, you know, how hard it is to apply tarot to a modern life, especially when you're learning. And I think that's because, and you mentioned before, Susanne, we didn't have tarot blogs back then. There was no YouTube, and all the existing tarot books, which some people still revere, are dry and dusty, and it's about you know, esoteric Judaism and stuff. It's like, oh, who the hell cares?
There's nothing dry and dusty about your book, Janet.
No,
there really
is. It's very important. Thank you. It was important for me for it to be updated, because I'm sorry, but most of us, I would say, don't live in a cloistered, you know, place where we're studying all these ancient dusty texts, and every card is seen through a heavy Jungian, which I do bring out the Jungian, but I just make it modern. I put it where we live, because let's face it, if we are actually tarot readers, or even if we're just using tarot for creativity or self-empowerment or meditation, we live in modern days. We are not cloistered nuns here. We're not, you know, Jewish scholars. We are living where it's down and dirty and muddy, and we have illness and relationships and money troubles and businesses and on and on. And so if tarot is so versatile and accessible, I can't believe there hasn't been more done on it. And so
oh yeah, I mean,
so when I see that, I'm like, I'll do it. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
I think more should be done. I think there should be other books with modern, contemporary associations.
But you have to have culture. You know, you kind of have to be well-read. I mean, I'm not being arrogant, I swear to God, but you kind of have to be well-read. You have to, know some of the things. I don't even have TV programming. I haven't had TV programming for over 10 years, but I get TV shows and movies and things on DVD. And because of my bit method and how I learned tarot, I instantly am always seeing associations. And I think it takes a person who can think laterally and make those associations. And tarot, especially as it was 20 years ago, it was so left brain. We were not really encouraged to see it in modern terms. It was just very esoteric in its application even, and we were wondering, what do we do with these court cards? I have no pages that live near me. Who the hell's the queen besides me? And you're trying to figure these things out. And so I think the reason why, too, that we haven't seen a lot of that is because you do have to have a breadth of knowledge and experience to kind of pull this out. And it just so happens that that's one of my gifts, but it's also a curse because that's the magpie, too. I get distracted and I'm wanting to propose more books. And Ron's like, finish the one you're under contract for. And so it helps me, to see the tarot and everything in a matrix and bring it out, but it's also sometimes hard to stay focused and also make it relatable because then I have to translate what I see and associate it, but somehow, okay, how do I put this in words so a person can see this, grasp it, and apply it?
Yeah. But you described
it's exhausting being me. It's exhausting, I tell you.
You described the 7 clue, but did you describe the bit method?
Well, the bit method is the basis of my Back in Time tarot book. This was my first book that came out actually 2008. And I actually have samples on my blog. So if you go to fizzofideas.com and look in the category for BIT tarot, you can see my bit method. You can see examples on how to use the bit method. I have 80 songs on there, songs from the 1980s. Is that totally cool or what? And I actually take that chapter and I don't just list the songs I associate with tarot cards, but I embed the YouTube videos.
Oh,
it took me forever, but yeah, and then 9/11, I also reproduced Lon Milo Duquette's submission for 9/11. He used the Thoth deck. So I have some samples from the book. But the bit method basically, it's called Back in Time Tarot. And it says, okay, look back in time, even if it was just a second ago or 10 minutes ago or in ancient history. Make a snapshot and then start associating tarot cards with it. And journal your associations and why. And it requires thinking and diligence, but it's a lot of fun too, though, because you can use a song, you can use lyrics, you could do a movie. I mean, for a movie, Beauty and the Beast, there you go. You can do lovers, you can do the strength card and how she deals with, the Beast. You can do, let's say, Page of Coins because Belle is studious. So you can actually you can be as much, as specific and as thorough as you want, or you can just do general themes. Okay, generally, what card would you associate with Beauty and the Beast, or what 3 cards? Or you could actually break it down. Same way with a news headline. You go to CNN, take a headline, read it, or even just read the headline. Ask yourself, okay, what card would I associate with that headline? And then if you want to be more ambitious, read and say, okay, what would I associate with the players? You could do this with history. You could do it with a novel. You could do it with poetry, songs, your own memories. You can do it really for shadow work, healing. Like if you've been through really rough times in your life, you can learn to reframe and heal your situation by saying, okay, what would I associate with this wounding? What card? Okay, but how do I want to feel about it? Or how could I maybe heal? So it's really actually kind of deep when you get into it. And I have 3 exercises at the end of every single chapter to help a person, to give them practice, say, okay, now it's your turn. So 3 times 78. So exercises are very important to me, or journaling prompts.
Yeah.
Like with Naked Tarot, I wanted to have the spread because I want people to take what they know, and I don't want it to just be mental masturbation where, oh, isn't this great or this mind-blowing, but then they don't use it and it doesn't become a part of them They don't embody it, or they don't really, if it's not a part of them, they can't draw upon it when they're reading for themselves or others, bottom line. And so anytime you want to be that kind of tarotist, it takes work. It just takes work. You cannot just be keywords. Not if you want to be effective. I mean, maybe if you're a fortune teller reading, but
that's why I like exercises like that. For instance, if you're on Twitter, go on Twitter, do a search for pound tarot 2.
Oh, I love that.
So it's tarot and it's TOO, tarot 2. And it's a daily exercise. You get a couple of cards and you got to say something about it. Janet has the best responses ever. I've done a couple of good ones, actually. In fact, mine got retweeted the other day. I was like, oh, I finally did a good one. But it's an interesting exercise, and it really helps.
When I'm in rare form, which I was the other day, I think the Tarot 2 is the combo. Somebody draws 2 cards and asks everybody on Twitter, okay, how would you interpret these 2 cards if they came up? And I think the Tarot 2 that Dax was talking about was Tower plus 4 swords reversed. And I was just in a snarky mood, and I said something like, hey, Doc, I'd really like to stay in bed and rest, but this explosive diarrhea is just, I know, totally ignorant, just
perfect.
Well, yeah, I suppose, but but it makes people think too. That's why I love exercises like that, because why couldn't the tower mean diarrhea? Why couldn't it? Especially after eating Mexican, and then you have the 4 swords. It goes to show there's a medical aspect. And if it's reversed by God, you can't rest because you're running to the toilet a lot. See?
Yeah.
It makes total sense. It does.
It's like when I
twisted, but it makes sense.
I finally dragged myself kicking and screaming out of those tarot tunes, from my early tarot learning, and I'm trying to think more contemporary, and now, like, when I see the 8 of Wands, I think the internet every time, it's like internet,
Exactly.
And we need more of this. I would love, and combinations, color combinations, and that are contemporary, because most of the stuff out there is just, wow.
And very brief and superficial. I mean, I picked up another new tarot book the other day, and there we go with the minors. You're lucky to get a paragraph. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Yeah. I don't know how these books keep getting published, but.
And I think that's part of the problem. I mean, I mentioned my very first deck, that Tarot de Marseille, that didn't even, its little white book was just a little leaflet that came in the box.
I don't know how you did
and
it.
It just listed maybe half a dozen keywords for the majors. The minors didn't even get mentioned. I'm like, well, what about these other 50 of cards? What am I supposed to do with that? And I think that's why I use that mainly as a majors deck, because I'm like, I don't know what to do with this. You tell me nothing.
2 batons. What the hell? Going skiing? What?
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, oh, what am I supposed to do with that? I don't know.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time to find a deck that I was really comfortable with. And I made a point of going out and saying, I cannot have pip cards in my minors. I'm a visual person. I need something to engage with.
Oh, that's the thing.
I was going to say, I can't learn the meanings by rote paraphrasing.
That's the other thing I forgot to mention when we were talking about Zoom and being on camera is I grabbed my tarot deck here. Tarot is a visual medium.
Yes.
It's another reason for video, why we decided to do the video show.
Did you want me to read a section of the Hierophant real quick?
Yes.
Oh, go on.
Okay. All right, I'll just read the stripped down overview. See, each chapter has a stripped down overview, keywords, personifications and embodiments, quote, and then I have all the correspondences, which include a challenge and a gift. That's another thing I also did for every card, a challenge and a gift for every card. Occupations, vocations, Disney totem, animal symbol, flower essences, crystal stone, aromatherapy, body parts, systems and health issues, mystical messenger, Sabian symbol, writing prompt, and affirmation. And then I go on to have advice for career, romance, parenting. That's something else no one has ever done, a parenting section. And I'm thinking to write a tarot parents and a tarot for kids, but we'll see. And then there's a spiritual section, recommended resources, and then my card layout. So that's every chapter. So I'm just going to read. Yeah, I know. No wonder it took me years to write. Okay, I'm just going to do the stripped down overview for the Hierophant. This is funny. I mean, if I do say so myself. Arguably one of the biggest pains in the ass within the entire tarot, the holier-than-thou Hierophant shames his audience with shoulds, musts, and always never ultimatums, putting the prick in bishopric. Often lording over a church, spiritual group, tarot organization, or elitist subculture, this man of the cloth upholds specific traditions, reveres mysterious doctrines, transmits esoteric teachings, and polices the moral terrain of his devotees. Specializing in us versus them rituals and customs, he only sees black and white, measures only by right and wrong, and rewards only the unquestionably obedient. When suffering from a messianic complex, and this narcissistic douchebag usually does, he uses sacred, secret, or occult knowledge to puff up his sense of self-importance and shore up his fragile sense of self, usually hiding behind the words of Jesus, Crowley, Allah, Jehovah, or some other revered expert as a didactic shield. He couches his insecurity, doubts, and megalomania within condescending pronouncements and thinly disguised barbs, often wearing a religious robe, clerical collar, or symbolic jewelry while he does it. It gets better.
Wait, there's more?
His illusion of control, assumption of divine authority, or sense of special entitlement becomes questioned or threatened, he often resorts to ranting, fire and brimstone preaching, intimidation campaigns, slandering from his bully pulpit, defaming rivals on the internet, or the outright spiritual abuse of his minions. Relying on codependence and sheeple to populate his flock, he preys upon those desperate for a sense of belonging, community, and validation. As such, his tactics usually go unquestioned, let alone rebelled against, until someone seriously gets hurt or dies, or his fuzzy income tax math and money laundering flags the attention of the IRS. I know. And that's just the intro.
And that's just the intro. And I do want to mention that Janet was not talking about the Tarot Guild.
Oh, hell no.
To be honest, that's
okay,
kind of what Tarot Insider, that's what Tarot Insider came from, really, because you see all this sort of
bullshit.
All this bullshit. There's cliques, and if you're not part of their gang, you're not good enough, and that kind of thing. And we're just like, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And we wanted to create Tarot Insider, didn't we, Dax? Because we thought that, enough is enough, and you need a safe space, because not everybody, sadly still, not everybody can practice the tarot openly.
That's true.
Some communities, some spiritual paths are still closed off to it. I think actually more so today than they used to be, because I know my and I'm hoping my mum's not watching this in case I get it wrong, but I'm sure it was like my great-great-grandmother was Catholic, but she still read the tarot, she did Ouija, she did tea leaves and palm reading and that kind of thing. And I kind of think, my God, if you tried doing that now, you'd get totally ostracized and shot down, So I do think actually, if anything, we've become more conservative, more
legalistic.
Directed. Yeah, exactly.
It's a religious spirit is really what it is. And that's another reason I wrote Naked Tarot. It's basically a finger, not so much now to the tarot community, but to the Hierophant, for those who are into the cliques and who try to, Jesus, my main man, the only people he ever slammed when he was on earth was the Pharisees.
Yeah.
The Pharisees were the religious leaders who prevented people from getting to the spiritual truth and spirit of the law. Yeah. Those are the only people he ever, that's why he got pissed off, and he up, with the table with the money changers saying, what are you doing charging people money, in the house of God? Or, the self-righteousness, better than, and the elitism. He goes, you look like a whitewashed, tomb, but inside you're full of dead men's bones, or he even say, you're like, you'll go, what do you say? You go land and sea to win one convert. But when you do, you end up making them twice the son of hell as you. Meaning, you do your promotions and you try to get people in your association and your groups and your houses and your things, but then you make them just as dogmatic and self-righteous and exclusionary, and as the head. It's a trickle down thing. And and so Naked Tarot is also for that. It's like it's trying to undermine the system. It's trying to undermine the establishment, undermine legalistic people who try to prevent people from learning tarot by having stupid rules saying, okay, you have to use this deck, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to be a member of my association, you have to pay money, to learn the tarot, you have to buy my $30 book, no.
See, I was like that. Everybody said when I was looking for a deck, everybody said, oh, you must have the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, you must have it. 20 odd years on, I still don't have an edition in any shape or form, because I'm a little Miss Contrary. If you tell me I've got to do something.
Oh, I resisted too. I think I got my first Waite deck like 8 years ago. It's like, hell no, I'm not doing it. You tell me to do it, I'll do the opposite.
Yeah, exactly. But I think as well, hang on. Oh, darn it, I had a really good thought and I've lost it now because I'm a magpie.
Well, real quick while you're thinking, I want to mention if you're live with us in the chat room and you got questions for Janet, you can just type them in the chat. If you haven't found it yet because you're new to Zoom, you just move your cursor to the bottom of the screen. You'll get your control panel, click the chat bubble, and it'll open up for you, and you can ask questions for Janet.
People can ask me anything.
Well, now there's an invitation.
I have nothing to hide, It's like, ask me anything, whatever.
It's, and I think it's true as well that what you were saying before was about kind of looking at the hypocrisy of it, because so often in tarot we get tied up with rules and regulations. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's something that I know I covered in my book, and we're going to cover it. It's next week, isn't it, Dax? The myths and mysteries of tarot.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
tarot myths and mysteries.
You must keep your tarot deck in a black silk bag. And I've been asked why many times, and I thought about it for my book, Working with Tarot, and I do you know what, the only thing I can think of is the fact that back in the day, black silk was expensive, and it was a way of saying, look how big my boots are, or some other.
Oh my God, that's fascinating.
There's actually another explanation.
This is how good I am. This is how rich I am. Now, obviously, black is a banishing color. So the idea is that it banishes negativity. Silk is
it's a mystery.
There's other like practical purposes and another semi-esoteric one, but you're going to have to tune in next week.
Exactly. But it's so refreshing to see a book that strips away the...
Yes, thank you, Janet.
That strips away so much of the nonsense and just gives it to you in a very modern way, and kind of, but still empowers you to do the work yourself, rather than, like you said, rather than saying, this is what this card means, this is what this card means, this is what this card means. Mm-hmm. Your methods sort of say, okay, these are the kind of characters that you're going to meet that have these things, but what does this card mean to you? And I think that's a really refreshing thing.
Well, I always loved that aphorism that said, you give a man a fish and he eats for a day. And I feel like that's what you do when you just throw keywords or the dry stuff. But if you teach him how to fish for himself, then he eats for a lifetime. And see, that's the thing sometimes with elitists and occultists. They want to keep it secret. They want to keep out the riffraff, which usually means we want to have a steady stream of income because you can only learn tarot until you come in our secret group and you pay for it, and so people who want to freely disseminate tarot knowledge and wean people from reliance on gurus or teachers. I mean, it's okay to have training wheels, but there comes a time when you got to take it off and you ride the bike. And so that's what I'm all about, is teaching people to fish for themselves. I don't care, they just buy my book or even they learn my method and they never buy anything for me. That's fine. I would rather them find out my method, learn it, and be empowered and become a whole individual and become healed and live their best life. I mean, that's all that matters to me. I mean, most of us don't go into tarot to make money because it's so niche, unless, somebody's doing the smoke and mirrors on the side. But if you're doing like the straight stuff, you don't make money for this kind of stuff, not even with decks, unless you hit the lottery and some people start to share it and it becomes a viral sensation. But for most of us, it doesn't happen, for whatever reason. And so we do it for the love of it and to empower people and to express our own creativity. And so I just hope that Naked Tarot bolsters people. It helps people be more brave, especially women. So many people are just so afraid to speak their authentic truth, and they're so choked up with their throat archetype. The throat chakra. They just are afraid to say how they feel. They're afraid to feel things deeply, so they have to do the, love and light, and they just own this big old shadow. And like the moon, it's like pushing a ball underwater. The harder you try to push, the deeper you try to push, the harder it's going to bounce back. So I just want people to strip away the crap, relate to people on a heart-to-heart level, and learn to fish for themselves.
I think what we need is a Naked Tarot app that allows you to easily access the different sections under the different cards, and just that would be really cool, I think. Because it's so voluminous. I was thinking, as I was reading through, I was like, wow. It would take me almost as long as it took Janet to write the book for me to learn all these and keep it all in my head. But if I had a cool app, I could just go, oh, parenting under this. Okay.
Oh, neat.
Isn't that a great idea?
That would be cool.
See, that's the difference between your brain and mine, Dax, because I was reading it and I was going, oh my God, this is brilliant. I'm learning this all so easily. And I'm emotionally engaged with it.
No. I take the number of cards, 78, times the number of she has, the same structure for each, with all the different, and I say, okay, that's like 25 things times 78 that I have to know.
Hey, if anybody wants to do it. I just write the stuff, programming.
If I had the little app, I could just go, okay, I need this, this, and this.
Okay, somebody needs to do it.
Okay, we're gonna have to build it. We have to build an app for Janet. So, are you going to come back for a book launch when it comes out? Hopefully later.
Oh, I tell you all the time. Anytime you want me, I'm there. Always.
The other thing, before I forget, is that Janet has agreed to do a private interview for just the members of the guild, and also a workshop as well. In fact, you had a great idea for a workshop.
Well, I wanted to include that in Naked Tarot as well. Pathological tarot. I came up with this system. I've never shared it, but I was contemplating numerology and looking at the similarities between all the 3 cards, all the 4 cards. And I just came up with, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I could see how this would apply. And so like the 3s are usually mommy issues, 4 is authority, father issues, but I delineate. And so I was thinking maybe pathological tarot. I haven't put it in like a teaching format yet, but
that'd be cool.
Put that Naked Tarot.
Even if it was a discussion and not a full-on workshop, we could do it for the Tarot Guild members.
That'd be, oh, absolutely. I'll do anything you want. And I didn't use the F-bomb.
I know, we made it all the way through without the F-bomb. Hey, before we let you go, because our next topic, everybody tune in next week, obviously, for Tarot Myths and Mysteries. Janet, what's your favorite myths and mysteries about the tarot that we can talk about next week? I know, off the top of your head.
Yeah. Probably shuffling. I've looked at a couple modern books even now, and how you do, with your left hand, you divide them into 3 piles.
The non-dominant hand.
Yeah, and you do your 3 piles, and I'm like, oh my God.
Because that will ruin it if you use your right hand.
And the thing is, I am not ambidextrous, by God. I could do nothing with this left hand except about this. That's all I can do. And so it's like, I can't, it's just dumb. It's all dumb. But,
Yeah.
you know, putting it out in the moon to get charged, burying it with salt. I got to watch out. I'll piss off the New Agers because they'll get mad. But,
Janet
you know,
is going, wait,
clean.
I put my crystal on top of it and put it out in the moon every other.
Oh, my God. Sleep with it.
Don't you, Suzanne?
Sleep with the cards under your pillow and you'll dream about, oh,
Because
God.
somebody said to me, don't you, because I put on social media, I bought a new Oracle deck. And they're like, are you going to put them out under the, because it was around a full moon, are you going to put them out under a full moon, under a crystal? Like, are you kidding me? At the time I was in California. I'm like, I live in the Mojave Desert. If I do that, they're going to be all over the military housing base. And I do not want to be explaining to the neighbours knocking on the door, excuse me, have you seen my death card? No.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, I don't even pray. I don't even, you know, it's like, I have no use for
Don't light any candles? What?
Like spread cloths to me, or, you know, ridiculous. Okay, all right, I said ridiculous.
Right,
I can't bring it back.
The cards keep falling off. I can't get them.
Oh, well, okay, if you need it to anchor, but it's like I use my desk, I use the dining room table. I don't pray, don't light candles, don't have mood music. I have no incense in the house, no sage. You know, if I want to clear space, I would go in it and say, get the hell out of my house. You know, that's my sage.
Something else
I always say, if you
next week, something else we'll talk about next week is quite frequently, okay, this is going to get me really in trouble with the tarot community. I don't use a physical deck anymore. I have it with me kind of for show, but
you've gone too far.
99.99% of the time, I do my readings on my laptop or on my phone. In fact, I don't have my deck with me. I just whip out the phone and I do the reading right on the phone.
I know a lot of people will download an app for a deck to trial it and then buy the physical deck. But yeah, you're the only person I know that is sort of 99% digital.
So like on the camera, when I'm talking to the client, I've got the physical cards to make them feel better. But in reality, I'm not using the deck. I mean, it comes
I can't go that far.
It comes instantly on my screen. Well, you know, the tarot thought police, you know, I mean, they're going to be coming up to the door and knocking pretty soon and taking me away.
Oh, no. I'll be your bodyguard.
Yeah. You know who I'm talking about, too. Anyway.
Well, let's just quickly mention, I want to check I've got the link here right, Janet. It's nakedtarotbook.com. People can go over to there.
Or you could just go to my website too, janetboyer.com, and you can literally find everything there. Because if you go to janetboyer.com, you look at the navigation menu, you can find my books, our decks, how to get a reading, all my reviews. Dax was off when he said 400 some reviews, but he's probably close. I have hundreds of tarot reviews on my site. So janetboyer.com. You can even find my blog through there. So you go there, but if you want to go specifically to the book page to look at the excerpt, that's nakedtarotbook.com. But it's basically just a subdivision of my main site.
And stop by our website, you know, tarotguild.org/Janet has all that. So it's real easy, you know, it links to everything. And actually, I just thought of some more links I'm going to add. But and also your books are in the carousel down there. So
thank you.
tarotguild.org/Janet. Go check it out.
There's only one Janet.
Yes. And
just the one.
So, you know, Tarot Guild members, be looking out for when we announce we're going to have Janet back on Zoom privately for a private, we'll do a private interview. We'll also do a little mini workshop or something like that coming up real soon.
Absolutely.
Yep. If you're not a member yet, go over to tarotguild.org and join. We'd love to have you. And our Facebook group, of course, it's almost up to 5,000 people now. If you're into
wow.
You want
how far we've come, Dax, how far we've come.
I know. On the tarotguild.org website, you can click the Facebook icon, or you can search Tarot Guild, look for the group, or you can just type in tarotguild.org/Facebook. It'll take you right over there. And then, of course, our new Tarot Insider page, we have over 100 likes already. Come by and like us. Tarotinsider.com takes you right there, or facebook.com/Tarot Insider. We're there. All of our shows are going to be archived there and on YouTube. Love it, love it, love it. Well, thanks for being here with us, Janet. This was a lot.
Oh, I'll play with my sharks. Sorry. Thank you. having me. And Susanne, you're so adorable, by the way. I wish you lived next door. You seem like such a kindred spirit. Dax, I mean, you know, you and I get along well, but...
It's probably just as well I don't live next door to you, Janet. I don't think
nothing would get done. Ever.
True. We would just be talking about our ideas and...
Gin.
I do want to do a shout out to our co-host that couldn't be here, Ruth Ablan. Hopefully she'll be back with us next week. And but that's it, folks. That's all she wrote.
Thank you for joining us.
Bye, everybody.
And thanks for having me, guys.
Always a pleasure, Janet.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
See you next week.